start this meeting, our Chairman Pro Tem, Brad Parrish, is not here, so we need to entertain a motion to have someone as our Chairman Pro Tem. Would anybody so move to make that motion for an individual?
I will make the motion for Dave Schmanek to be the pro temp.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say yea.
Yay.
Nays? Very good. All right. Welcome to this meeting of the Wooddale Community Development Commission. My name is Dave Schmanek. I'm the Chairman Pro Tem of the Wooddale Community Development Commission. Roll call. Will the Secretary please call roll?
Mr. Damasco?
Present.
Mr. Carriage? Is not. Mr. Peterson is not here?
Present.
Yes, he is, sorry. Mr. Schmanek?
Present.
Mr. St. Marie is not here, and Mr. Woods?
Present.
Very.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Marilyn.
we're missing one.
Who am I missing? Oh, Mr. Vance, I'm sorry.
Present.
I see you.
See what happens when
I'm
you sit
sorry,
too far
you're
away.
here.
All right, very good. I declare quorum is present. The business items for today, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the February 25th, 2019 meeting.
I'll second it.
You'll be
You
the
need first.
You're the first.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Very good. There be a motion and a second. All in favor by saying aye. All those
Aye.
opposed signify by saying nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. The minutes are approved. We have one public hearing scheduled for tonight. All testimony will be given under oath at the hearing. There will be opportunity for the public to offer testimony and comment. Following the public hearing, our deliberations will be open to the public, in the sense that all are invited to listen and to watch. The public, however, may not speak during our deliberations. State statute requires a vote by a majority of the members of the Community Development Commission for those matters that will be referred to the City Council for approval, and for those members on which the Community Development Commission will make the final decision. Staff will provide a general description of the proposal, followed by their analysis. With respect to others who wish to speak, you may give an opinion or present specific evidence as to why you believe that the applicant meets or fails to meet the standard for the request. Finally, we will be strictly adhered to the schedule prepared for tonight's meeting. In the event you or your attorney have filed an appearance as an objector, you'll be afforded sufficient time within which to present your evidence. Whether you're a member of the public wishing to make a statement for the record, or a witness testifying on behalf of the case, or an objector, you'll be placed under oath and begin by stating your name and address. If you're not presenting evidence on behalf of the case or an objector, your remarks will be taken after all of those who have filed an appearance as an objector have presented all of their evidence. You'll be subject to question by the Community Development Commission. To allow as many people as possible to be heard, if you're not an objector, we would request that your remarks be limited to 5 minutes. If additional time is needed, the hearing will be continued until the next available hearing date. I will now call the matter before us this evening. Public hearing case number 2019-CDC-03 is in regard to a text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code. The text amendment proposes to allow variations from fence regulations. Staff, please provide a summary of the request and indicate when notice of the public hearing was published and whether you have the certificate of publication from the newspaper.
Would you raise your right hand, state your name and address, please?
My name is Gosha Pocheja, 404 North Wooddale Road in Wooddale, Illinois.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the publication of notice for this petition was published on March 1st, 2019. A certificate of publication is on file. So in front of us tonight, we do have a petition for a text amendment, as you mentioned. This text amendment is to section 17.404, which is a list of authorized variations. As you are aware, the Community Development Commission is able to recommend approval of certain variations only in instances that are listed as the authorized variations, or the second option is as part of a planned unit development as a deviation. So in order for anyone to be able to seek a variation from the regulations in our municipal code, it has to be first listed as a authorized variation in this particular section 17.404. The purpose of this text amendment in front of us today is to allow fence variation as an authorized variation. The intent is to provide a little bit more flexibility to property owners that normally would not be able to build a fence that would meet the specific regulations. And also, we wanted to bring a little bit more consistency, as majority of the adjoining, actually all of the adjoining municipalities, but also going a little bit further out, the municipalities in our area do already allow variations from fence regulations. And just for clarity, we did want to add that any variation request would still have to be considered during the public hearing before the CDC Commission first. The actual petition would have to meet the variation standards, just as any other would. Also, there would have to be hardship proven by the applicant, and in this particular instance, the actual hardship would have to be tied to the actual parcel of land. Upon consideration during a public hearing before the Community Development Commission, the finding of facts would be adopted, and then the actual recommendation would move forward before the City Council for final approval. So all we're really trying to do is add an ability for a property owner to request a variation from the fence regulation, and then the standards and all the other procedures would apply as any other type of variation that we already have. And really, to sum up, the request for the text amendment is consistent with comprehensive plan. It is, in our opinion, consistent with the UDO. Therefore, staff recommends that the Community Development Commission recommends approval of the proposed text amendment to the City Council.
Staff have any other remarks regarding that? Okay. Does any member of the Community Development Commission have any questions for staff? All right. Is there anyone in objection to the case, or any member of the general public in attendance who wishes to make a comment or has a question regarding this request? If so, please stand and be put under oath. There you go. You could take the podium, she'll put you under oath.
Would you raise your right hand, please? State your name and address.
Sam Pabon, 304 Sunnyside Avenue, Wooddale.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you
Always.
God?
Well, I'm just going on your amendment here. I have a house that's fence already is in place. I just want to replace the fence that's there, and I can't because of the line of the house. My house is set crooked, and the back pole on my house would go straight with this, the front of my house. And all I'm trying to do is replace the fence that's there. I'm not trying to put a new fence in or anything. And I can't replace the fence because of the way the house is sitting. So I don't know how to explain it. I could show you, but I can't explain it.
I understand.
It's an existing fence.
Fence.
And you would like to replace it.
I just want to replace the
And
fence that's
it's not
there.
allowed based upon
Right.
unable to have a variance grant at this point. Okay, very good.
Thank
Does
you.
any- It's understood, I think.
Mr. Pabon, I'm sorry, your address again?
304 Sunnyside Avenue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to make a statement? Please step up to the podium.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address.
Wojciech Siwecki, 100 Iroquois, Wooddale.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So
Yes.
help you God.
I live in 100 Wooddale, right on the corner on 100 Iroquois Wooddale, right on the corner or on Montrose and Iroquois. I don't have any fences yet, but I have 2 front yards because my house is all the way back to from the street, and actually it's facing the Montrose, not the Iroquois. And what it is, I just wanna build the fence so it's not with the line with my house, like you guys allowed. And of course I can't because of this. And I can only say that I have 2 kids, and they 8 and 12. You know, and I live by a pretty busy street, which is Montrose. And I already lost a cat last year because of, you know, because of that, because no fence at all. And I don't want to lose anybody else and anything else, you know, on the street. Especially, I don't want to even think about my kids
Right.
going there. Only, and the second reason is last year there was a kind of like a accident over there. One guy was knocking the door like around 12 at midnight, and I think my neighbor called the cops, and they show up because when he wasn't answering, you know, the door, then he started pulling the knob, tried to break into a house. So he called the cops, they show up, but he you know, ran away. And far as I heard from my neighbors, he hid right behind my shed, you know, because everybody got access from all over the, you know, and he was hiding there, basically. They catch him right on the corner, but, you know, that's why I guess I need a fence.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That'll be all.
Okay, great. We appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, sir, would you spell your last name, please?
SIWECKI.
E-C-K-I. And your first name?
Wojciech, WOJCC. CH.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks.
Assuming folks have any questions for them, we've given them to them, right? Are there any questions of anyone at this point in time with public comments?
Well, I'd ask the city, with this variation, both of these people would be able to get their fences taken care of, pretty much, correct?
No.
So, as Gosha mentioned, this would allow them to apply for a variation from the fence regulations, but they would have to come forward with their own application separately to indicate which regulation they're seeking a variance from.
Okay.
So to be clear, right now, they have no mechanism to do so,
That is correct, which is
Okay.
why
whether
the,
it's them or anyone else.
exactly.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Anyone from the public? No additional testimony will be admissible, and public comment can be provided after the public hearing is closed. Having no additional testimony, I'll now close the public hearing for case number 2019-CDC-03. We'll now proceed into deliberation of the merits of this request. Commission, have any questions, comments, discussions?
Well, I think it's the way we have to go. There are a lot of people that do have problems with fences that are existing, and we want them to meet in the neighborhood, but if they can't do it, you know, they have to have a avenue where they can do it.
And just to be clear, and I'm assuming I can ask staff this, if there's a PUD and there's currently PUDs in place with subdivisions that have current declaration and regulations, those obviously have to be taken into consideration. Because I know where I live, we have those. Go ahead.
So technically, the city does not enforce the covenants and restrictions that are imposed within a subdivision unless it is something that was approved as part of a PUD approval. So if a subdivision came in and there wasn't a PUD, it was just a subdivision, then whatever CCRs may have been adopted or are in place for the subdivision, it's up to the homeowners association to enforce that. However, oftentimes we do try and take a look at that to make sure that there's not conflicting, but typically we would require some sort of approval from the homeowners association. It just sort of depends on the circumstances and the structure.
So if you're saying that if the PUD was a requirement in order for the subdivision to be created, then you can enforce it. Is that what you're stating?
Yes.
So you guys have a list of those PUDs that are within the city that you can enforce that for?
Yes,
And then the original agreements.
I would say it's pretty atypical to have fence regulations as part of a PUD approval. But yes, if it were a condition of approval or a variance from the regulations, then yes, it would be a stipulation that the city would be able to enforce.
Right. Any other? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, Kelly and Gosha, for taking the time to address this to help these people, instead of just saying no. You know, we're a small community, but we have to learn how to work with each other. And thank you for addressing this, and thank you for your concerns and bringing this up. I never knew about it. I never knew about it. I didn't know it was black and white. But at least you're adding something to this community that's good. To me, it's helping the community, helping the homeowner. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
The only thing I would say is it's logical that there's so many whatever you want to call it, they just, there's too many properties that are not set up properly. And they have to do something like this, otherwise it's going to be on an individual basis. Can't change anything else.
Very good. There being no further discussion, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
You need the motion read. Do you have a recommendation on the motion?
Do I have it?
Yes.
Do I?
It's on page 2 of the staff memo, recommendation.
Yeah.
Recommendation of the staff memo? That I have.
There you go. On the bottom there.
Okay. The proposed tax amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the unified development ordinance. Based on the findings listed above, staff recommends that the Community Development Commission make the following motion recommending approval of the amendment. Based on the proposed tax amendment to the UDO, as summarized in the staff memo, I move that the Community Development Commission adopt the findings of fact included within the staff memo as the finding of the Community Development Commission and recommend to the City Council approval of case number 2019-CDC-03.
Very good. Suggested motion is provided, and we have a...
Roll call.
No, we need a second.
Oh.
We have one.
I
Mr.
already
Woods.
seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
She's-
You are quick.
Mr. Damasco,
Four.
a vote for. Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Schmanik.
Yes.
Mr. Vant
Yes.
and Mr. Woods.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is recommended. Approval of the proposed tax amendment to Chapter 17 carries. Next, we have a staff liaison report, if there is one.
I do have one tonight. I figured I could, beef up
Thank you.
things a little bit here and give you an update as to where we're at with some of our projects. For the projects that came before the CDC, 1500 North Michael, this was one where we did a height variance as well as a curb cut variance. And so the shell building has been completed. They're currently in for permits for a build out for one of the tenants. There's actually going to be 2 tenants that are locating in there. And Snyder's of Hanover is a pretzel company, and so they'll be having a distribution center out of, I want to say it's like 2/3 of the building. So they're in for permit now, and then the other company, which I cannot for the life of me remember, I apologize, will be coming in for a build out permit for that the remaining portion of the building. 1555 North Middle, this was also one where we approved a height variance, and it is fully occupied and by Jazz Forwarding, which is a freight forwarding company that relocated to Wooddale. 1235 North Middle, this is also, I believe there was a curb cut variance, and I can't recall now if we had approved the text amendment for the height variance at that point or not, but the shell is nearly complete for that, and they do have a permit in for a build-out for Caesarstone, which will occupy approximately 2/3 of this building, which is a distributor for quartz countertops. The other portion of the building will be occupied by Heidelf North America, and they actually, they do instrumentation is their business. 170 West Irving Park is the Simba Kids Daycare where special use was approved, and then they also received a facade grant improvement. And so the construction is ongoing. I'm sure you've probably seen it on Irving Park Road. White Oaks Park, we approved, the PUD was approved for that a number of months ago, but due to some funding setbacks and then also waiting on an award of a grant from the state, then some of the phasing got shifted a little bit due to the funding, but that is actually, their permit has been submitted for phase 1, which includes the new community building. And then I can't recall if we've updated you or not, but the city council removed the aerial adventure or the aerial challenge course due to concerns from the neighbors. So the project had sort of shifted a little bit in scope prior to getting approval, but it is moving forward. And so, the cabin was demolished and some other accessory structures were demolished a number of months ago, and so now it's moving forward in terms of the construction. So you'll see some changes to the parking lot, landscaping improvements. There will be the new building, and then phase 2 is actually, the scope of that is a variety of other sort of amenities of the park, and that's being funded through an OSLAD grant through the state. The 330 to 342 West Irving Park, this is the corner of Addison and Irving. We had a little bit of a setback in terms of trying to get the final plat signed by DuPage County Division of Transportation as well as IDOT. So we finally worked out all the bugs with them. DOT actually required some additional right-of-way at the corner of Addison and Irving, so that all got worked out, and so we're looking to get that recorded. They're also in for permitting for the 7-Eleven gas station at the corner, and then they just released or announced that there will be a Starbucks drive-through as well as an AT&T store that will locate it in the other commercial building. So that's all great news. The library expansion, that was a PUD that was approved, and that project unfortunately has stalled a little bit because they're still working out the final details of, I think, some of the interior design elements. So they will be coming in for permitting here shortly, is my understanding. So that's still a project that hasn't been moved forward as of yet. And then with our most recent CDC hearing, the 700 to 770 North Wooddale Road project, that was on the agenda for the Planning, Zoning, and Building Committee of the City Council last week, and is actually scheduled for approval on Thursday. So that was a 7-0 vote at City Council. So they were, the project was very well received, and the company Forward Space was introduced to the City Council, and it seems like a project that everybody's very excited about. So as of the projects for next month, we possibly have 2 cases. One of them is a lot consolidation, so I wouldn't imagine that taking a lot of time, but we also have another project that is a larger project. It's an assemblage of about 9.5 acres. And so if everything is in order for their application, then we will be publishing. So that may be a lengthier meeting, just as a heads up, just because of the nature of the project. So, and then if there's anything I missed, I'm happy to give an update if I can't recall. There's a lot of activity, which is always good. Okay. Oh, I did have one other item, if I may. Last year, about this time, we did an annual CDC training. We do have that video on the city's YouTube channel, so I would encourage everybody to kind of take a review through that. It's always a good refresher. Covers you know, the purpose of the commission talks about the legal implications, Open Meetings Act, which is something that I'm, want to make sure that everybody does that on an annual basis, the Open Meetings Act training. So I'm going to touch base with Amanda, the deputy clerk, and make sure that everybody's done that. And so if anybody has any questions about process, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, very good. If there's nothing else to go through, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You first.
Oh, I'll make the motion, sorry.
Second.
You're really changing.
I'm ahead of myself today.
Very good. Okay, if you're in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion carries.